Have you ever sometimes thought about certain fruits or vegetables? Man, I wonder if I can grow that indoors. Ever wonder if you could grow bananas if you happen to live in a growing zone that's not suitable for outdoor growing? The answer is yes, you can. Hey y'all, I'm Renee, and welcome to Tater Town. For all of you out there who live in a climate zone that's not optimal for growing tropical fruits outdoors because the lows get too low for them to survive winter, and if you have the space for indoor growing, I'm here to tell you it's absolutely possible. It just takes a little planning and extra care. And bananas are one of those plants you can cultivate indoors. But why would you even want to? I mean, they're almost always available at the grocery store and they're not expensive. If you're like me, you fall into a bunch of different categories. First, I love experimenting to see what I can actually make work in my house. Second, I love variety and trying different types of food. So the fact that the predominant banana in the grocery stores is the Cavendish, it's disappointing. I mean, there are over 1,000 varieties of bananas in existence, and we really only have easy access to one of those. And plantains, of course, but still. It's somewhat depressing to me. Third, and along the line of having access to only one variety, is the concept of food security. The majority of the world relies on industrial agriculture to provide us with our food, and almost all of what we eat are monocrops or monocultures, meaning only one variety is grown on the same area of land over and over again. They do this with livestock farming as well, and the problem with this is that when disease gets in, it can completely decimate that crop. That happened to the original banana we had in supermarkets, the Gros Michel banana. The plants were decimated by Panama disease, which is a fungus that spread via the root system. So farmers made the move to the Cavendish banana, which was naturally resistant to the fungus. But that fungus adapted and evolved around the Cavendish's resistance and is now spreading in South America. One of the ways to help with this destruction would be to move to polyculture farming, where multiple species are grown instead of just a single one. But of course, monoculture farming is more productive and profitable. The result, however, is more risk when something goes wrong. So instead of buying bananas at the store, I decided to try my hand at growing my own. And I don't eat a lot of bananas anyway, so it's not as if I'm relying on my tree for survival. Now I'm gonna apologize that you don't get a nice view of the bananas while I'm doing this video like you see in the thumbnail, because this tree is about 15 feet high right now, and I would have to do it while sitting on a ladder, and I don't trust myself enough to not fall off of that ladder during this video, so we're gonna stay down here for now. But we do have a little baby growing right now, so at least you get to see that. Now let's get to growing some bananas indoors at home. If you find this video informational, or any of my videos informational, and you like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing, hitting that like button and the notification bell, because it really does help me to continue making videos that will help you do those things you never thought you could. Okay, first you need to decide which type of banana you'd like to grow. And like I said earlier, there's a bunch to choose from. I always wanted a blue Java, but they do grow very tall, about 15 feet or more, but typically 15 feet. So make sure you have enough headspace for whichever variety you decide to grow. Even though I have the height for it, it became a challenge to maintain without a ladder once it got that high. So I plan to get some dwarf varieties like the ladyfinger. The nice thing is, if you get a smaller variety, you could move it outdoors in the summer. I did do that with this blue Java, but it eventually got so tall that I couldn't get it through the door frame, so it stayed inside after the first summer. Next, you're gonna need a grow light. Bananas need a lot of light, but it doesn't have to be a light that has a large footprint. For example, I'm using this LED light, which is a 100 watt LED. It's the equivalent of a 1,000 watt incandescent bulb, and it has worked out great. Since this isn't the sun, they'll need more exposure with a grow light, between 12 to 16 hours. I have mine set on a timer to provide 14 hours of light. Now, when I purchased my plant, it was maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, and I knew it was going to get much taller, so I rigged my light to be on a pulley so I could lower and raise it as needed. And because the light I'm using didn't have a long cord, I was left with either using extension cords or replacing it with a longer cord. So I bought some fancy rope-covered electrical cord and rewired the light to make it look nicer since, like I said, this is in my living room. I also used some swag hooks for pendant lights to keep the cord in place. Now that you've decided on the plant and your lighting, you need a planter and soil. Again, with the dwarf varieties, you could get away with a smaller planter, but with this guy, I needed a large planter. The one I have is 20 inches deep and about 26 inches on the sides. I decided to build one because have you seen the prices on large planters? Holy cow, they're expensive. Luckily, we have a cedar mill nearby and they sell A and B grade wood. A grade being the highest quality and B grade meaning it's still high quality, but maybe there's some larger knots or blemishes, but it's a lot less expensive. So we got some tongue and groove and made the planter with that. I added some drainage holes to the bottom, some wheels on it so I could move it around, and put a very large plant saucer underneath to catch any of the draining water. As for the soil, bananas need well-draining soil. So I used about 2 parts potting soil and added a bunch of peat moss and lava rocks, and that made up the rest. They also like slightly acidic soil, between 5.6 to 6.5 on the pH scale. So when I water it, I add a little citric acid to the water. Now, I only do this because my water is slightly basic. And I mean basic as in the opposite of acidic, not that it's boring. My water is higher than 7 on the pH scale, so if I didn't acidify it, it would prevent the roots from taking up the nutrients in the soil and eventually it would die. But you may already have acidic water, in which case you won't need to do anything. If you're curious how to test your water for this, I have a video on acidifying chicken water. Yes, it's about chickens, but it gives you all the basics for testing and acidifying your water. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. And since I already use citric acid for my chickens, and it can also be used for plants, that's what I use. It's super inexpensive and you only need a very tiny amount. And along those lines is water and fertilizer. Bananas are heavy feeders, so you'll need a good fertilizer. You can make your own. I don't, not yet anyway, because I found a great one aptly named Banana Fuel. Now, if you buy this, don't be put off by the price. I was at first, but I wanted to try it because a lot of people do use it. But for the past 2 years of using it, I've barely gone through it. I mean, I use about a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon of water a week, and I haven't even used a 1/4 of the bag. So it may be a bit more upfront, but it will last a long time. Of course, this is for a single plant, so when I have more, obviously I'll be going through it faster. As for water, they do drink a lot, but take care not to overwater it. At the beginning, I was watering by hand and checking it with a moisture meter, but I got tired of that, so I bought some of those ceramic plant water spikes, and since it's a large plant, I added 2 to the soil, and I have 2 1-liter long neck glass bottles that I keep filled. That way the plant gets water when it needs it versus me doing the extra work. So between the 2 ceramic waterers and the 1 gallon per week of fertilized water, it gets what it needs. Additionally, bananas are tropical plants, so they really like to be above 65 degrees Fahrenheit, ideally in the 70s, and they need humidity. That's not a problem here in Tennessee in the summer, but in the winter, or if it's dry in your house in the summer, you'll want to keep a humidifier going nearby. Once you're all set, you just have to wait. And I mean wait. I purchased this tree in February of 2023, and it took just under 2 years to flower, and it'll be another 4 to 6 months for the bananas to be ready to harvest. That's a long time for a few bananas. Oh, and the banana plant only fruits once and then dies. So if you want to have bananas on the regular, you'll need to have multiple plants fruiting at different times and starting new plants often. I'm certainly not there yet, but it is one of my goals. But I wanted to get 1 plant under my belt first. Plus, they look really cool. So even if you're not worried about harvesting the fruit regularly, the plant itself is definitely nice to have around. And every plant will have its own timeline. but here's the basics of what you can expect. As the plant grows, it sends out one leaf at a time from the center, and those leaves become the stem. It's actually called the pseudostem. I like to keep only 3 to 5 leaves on at a time, and if one breaks or if it's covered by another leaf and not receiving any light, I'll go ahead and remove those so the plant isn't diverting its resources to keeping those extra leaves alive. Now, these leaves aren't as easy to remove as you'd think. They're pretty thick and robust, so you'll need a good, sharp, clean knife to cut them off. You could use a machete. I have a knife like this. And I used to chop them with a quick upward and outward swing away from the stem because you do not want to damage the stem. But my husband found that a sawing motion has less room for error, so I started doing that. Just make sure whatever you use, clean it before you use it. That way you don't end up spreading disease from one plant to another, or if you're using it for something else. So after a long time has passed and it keeps sending up leaves, you'll know that your plant is getting ready to flower because the plant will send out what is known as a flag leaf. It's a much smaller leaf compared to the size of the ones that they regularly send out. Not long after the flag leaf comes in, a flower will emerge from the center and start opening up, revealing the female fruit. And then later, the male flowers. At this point, it will be several more months before the fruit is ready to eat. Be mindful of the flowers that drop from the plant because they are a sticky mess, so you'll be cleaning up your floors a lot. Another issue to be aware of is that as the plant becomes taller, it will probably start to lean a little bit, even more so when the fruit appears. So you may need something to brace it so it doesn't fall over. This may not be much of a problem with the dwarf varieties, but since I don't have one of those yet, I can't say for sure. And finally, I want to mention that at some point during the growth of your banana, it will send out a sucker, also known as a pup. This is a genetic copy of the adult plant. And once it reaches at least 12 inches, you can separate it from the rhizome and root system and plant it into a new container. This offspring will then grow to become another adult and produce fruit. Even if you decide you don't want to keep growing bananas, you should still remove it as it's fighting with the adult for resources. Also, there's only one here right now, and it may be the only one that forms, but it is possible that your plant will give you more than just one. Now, you can see here, I marked on the stem where 12 inches is, so I could easily see once it reached that point. And it's currently way taller than 12 inches because it took forever to get to that 12 inches, but then it started getting bigger way faster than I expected, so I haven't had a chance to separate it. So I'm gonna show you how to do that now, since I really need to do it. I've already got another planter ready for it with the mix of soil, peat, and lava rocks that I spoke about earlier. I'm going to dig up the soil with my hand so I can get a good idea of where the pup is attached to the mother plant. I'm doing this so I can make sure when I cut the plant away, when I cut the pup away, that I have a good amount of root system attached to the pup. If it lacks roots, it won't be able to thrive on its own. Come on. Oh my gosh. There we go. It's got a nice little root system on it. Yeah, you think? So far, this is the only sure way to propagate your banana plant. I do a lot of cloning of other plants. I did it with my lemon and lime trees, as well as other plants like tomatoes and basil, and I plan on making a video on how to do that. It really is a great way to copy a plant that has good genetics, and it also allows you to essentially get more plants even trees without the cost of buying new ones, or the lengthy time that you need in order to grow a plant from seed. But I couldn't seem to get it to work with the banana, though I'm still experimenting. Cloning monocots is more challenging than dicots, and the banana is a monocot, so we'll see. Since the majority of banana plants you purchase are hybridized, the fruit does not produce seeds. I mean, how not fun would it be to eat a banana with seeds? But remember, seeded bananas are actually more natural and disease resistant than these hybridized bananas, and you certainly can buy wild bananas that have seeds. Being hybridized also means you do not need to hand pollinate the flowers of your banana in order to get fruit. But I did pollinate some of the females just to see if it produces seed. I'm not sure it will, and from what I've read, even if it does, those seeds may not bear fruiting plants. I'll keep you posted on what happens, although that update will probably be a couple years from now. Regardless, if you'd like to keep growing bananas, just be sure to carefully remove the pup from the mother and replant it. And the only pest problem I've had with it are spider mites. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Spider mites torment my existence. They can completely decimate your plants in short order, and they're very difficult to eradicate. Plus, anytime you walk outside or bring home a new plant, you risk bringing them into your home. Luckily, this is a big plant, so it gives me more time to remove them than if a smaller, more delicate plant were to get them. Maybe I'll do a video on them at some point because they suck, literally. But I'm not gonna infect a plant just to show you, so I'm sure at some point I will get them again, and then I will show you how I clean the plant and treat them to get rid of them. Well, that's it. You too can grow bananas in your home. It really isn't that difficult. Let me know in the comments if you grow bananas indoors and what methods have worked for you, especially if you've been able to successfully clone your plant. I would really be interested in that. And thanks again for being here with me on Tater Town. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you can see more videos that will help you do those things you never thought you could.